Hey, Bastish BF for 64K and welcome to another episode of New Retro. So if you've never seen this show before, I take a look at a newly released game on an old classic system, and then we have a look at the game that might have inspired it, the inspiration game. And today's games are... So let's first check out the original. The first version of Prince of Persia was released in 1989 on the Apple II computer and released by Broderbund. The game was in development since 1985 and was started after the massive success that designer-programmer Jordan Mechner had with his previous release, Karateka, the action-adventure classic. Prince was initially a flop on the Apple II as most of its user base had moved on to newer systems at the time, and the game was quickly ported to DOS, which is probably its most famous version. If you've never played it before, it's an action platform adventure game, taking its inspiration, at least story-wise and style, as Jordan Mechner said, from Raiders of the Lost Ark and Tales from the Arabian Nights. It's a story of Jafar, the evil wizard who forces the princess to either marry him or die, and he gives her 1 hour to make her choice. Little does Jafar realize that her knight in shining armor is being held in the dungeons below the castle and has to make his way up to her and defeat Jafar once and for all. Gameplay is a bit tricky to get used to initially, but works like a charm, especially playing it on a keyboard, which for whatever reason feels like the most natural way to play this game. Solving light puzzles, picking up items such as a sword and health potions, partaking in sword fights with the dungeon guards, and avoiding all manner of traps is how the game plays out. The biggest element though is the time limit. You have 1 hour to complete the entire game, all 13 levels. A game over is only reached with the time ending, so it's quite possible to get yourself into an unwinnable situation. It's a tough game and not for the easily frustrated. The graphics are really impressive for the time, colorful and vibrant with lots of cutscenes like Karateka to tell the ongoing story. The animation is of special note, extremely fluid and realistic, and is its most memorable feature. Jordan used a technique called rotoscoping to achieve this by videotaping live action scenes and moves and then drawing over them frame by frame to achieve the realistic animation. It's brilliant and works extremely well, and has definitely inspired other games like Flashback, for example. The game is one of the most ported pieces of software in computer game history, with over 20 different versions currently existing. Jordan was also involved with the PC sequel, and you should also check out his excellent rotoscoped adventure game called The Last Express, which is a brilliant game as well. And now let's check out the new game. So you would think that with over 20 different versions of this game existing, a Commodore 64 port would have happened. But no, it didn't. It took 22 years and an unofficial port for it finally to appear on the C64 in 2011. And boy, was it worth the wait. The port was headed up by Andreas Varga, better known in the C64 community as Mr. Sid. He went back to the original Apple II source code to produce this fantastic version, which makes it very accurate to the original game. Besides programming, graphics, and sound, Andreas also had help with graphics by Stephen Day, who also worked on the excellent unofficial Donkey Kong Jr. conversion to the C64, which I covered in episode 6 of this show. Graphically, this game captures the look of the PC version very well, and all the animation and cutscenes are intact, and it has an excellent rendition of the PC music and good sound effects. It's quite an amazing feat. Not only that, but all 13 levels are present, making it a 100% accurate port in terms of keeping all features and levels intact. It's still a damn tough game, but plays really well, with light slowdown in certain sections, but apart from that, it's pretty brilliant. You can play it through emulation on BIOS or a C64 Mini, and the game is made possible to run on an original C64 as well as an Easy Flash cartridge, which holds more memory than a standard C64, allowing the game to run perfectly on the system. This is another excellent effort by Mr. Sid and crew, and still proves the old bread box has a lot of life still left in it, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So you're probably wondering, where do I find these games? For the original versions of Prince of Persia, you can check out myabandonware.com. And as for the Commodore 64 version, it's fan-made, so it's free. It's available at csdb.dk. And thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. If you can like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!